Hello and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. The live, retire, and travel abroad world is seeing a new type of expat. Actually, they've been around for a few years now, but it's getting ridiculously busy with these types of expats. Can you guess who they are? It's the digital nomad. The nomads started leaving the USA in droves post-2020 when corporations and businesses were shut down and they allowed their employees to work from home. And that's when the work from home thing really blew up in the USA and beyond. Of course, there's always been digital nomads, but it was post-2020 that just really started this whole digital nomad thing. So here we are today, 4 years later, and there are nomads literally all over the globe bringing their high USD earnings with them as they work off their laptops in perceived cheap paradises. When we first moved abroad, there was a small portion of remote workers. Mostly it was retirees and pensioners, though, that were moving abroad because they could live off their retirement income. Truth is, unless you have a way to support yourself while living and traveling abroad, you cannot stay abroad for very long. You have to have a financial means before you move abroad, and if it's perpetual, that's even better. Sure, some countries may be cheaper, but you still have to have a means of income, investment, or a retirement. This is why the retiree is such a popular expat in different countries all over the world. Certain countries cater to retirees, and now they're catering to the digital nomads. Now, we don't mean any animosity to the digital nomad, but they have attributed to the gentrification around the globe in most of the overrated countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Portugal, and Spain. Also, there are a few Southeastern Asian countries that are starting to feel the pressure from higher prices as well. The retiree also contributes to the phenomenon, but not like the digital nomad does, and here's why. The biggest reason being is the retiree actually stays somewhere more long-term, usually a year or more, and they go for the residency visas or the retirement visa, which allows them to stay in a country if they can show a certain amount of income. Each country is different in that respect. Retirees are known to stay put in a country longer. They are renting in the long-term rental prices, which still are all overpriced just because, well, you're an American. The digital nomad, on the other hand, rents more short-term, like 3 to 6 months, unless they've bought into one of the digital nomad visas that more and more countries are providing for the remote worker. Digital nomads are more apt to be targeted for short-term rental rates, though, which are less than 1 year usually. The rental prices go up significantly on the shorter-term leases, and many of them avoid leases altogether and rely solely on platforms like Airbnb, which have an AI algorithm that automatically raises prices when people just look at the same listing. You've seen this in times past. When you went shopping for airline tickets online, it's the same thing. Now, since the last few years have blown up with the digital nomads, we're seeing a different type of revolving door. The majority of retirees still come home after 1 to 5 years, just like they always have done. But the younger crowd, the digital nomads, they country hop, and when they get tired of a country, they just go and move on to another. We believe the digital nomad is more apt to stay abroad longer just because they adjust to the differences in culture easier, and some may even learn to speak the language. The youngish folks are less apt to come home because they don't have children or grandbabies they miss like us retirees do, although they still may have family that they miss. Missing family is right up there at the top of the list of why many retiree expats eventually do come back home. So the bottom line is that digital nomads are not in a big hurry to rush back home after a year or two. In fact, they may just move on to a different country when they get tired of the one they're in. It's really that simple. We think that with the onslaught of digital nomads all over the globe, instead of gentrification taking 5 or more years to blow up in a country, it just takes a few years now, such as in the case of Mexico City, where most digital nomads have traveled to in droves. Why Mexico City, you might be wondering? Because during the pandemic days, Mexico was the only country people could fly in and out of without any restrictions. Mexico City blew up with remote workers from the great USA. Many countries are now seeing all the digital nomad tourists and are gearing up with visas that cater to that group, allowing the remote worker to stay in their country up to 5 years with showing proof of funds. It's nice for the younger folks to be able to support themselves financially while living abroad. But what happens if your employer says you have to come into the office beginning on such and such day? Well, you can say bye-bye to living in paradise. Tech companies, though, like AT&T, are doing just that, with starting the 2025 new year off demanding that remote workers come back into the office. And other big tech corps are doing the same. We're just wondering how many of these tech workers are actually living and working abroad. We shall soon see how many Google searches for moving abroad and to certain countries begins to drop off on Google Trends. In late 2024, top corporations like Amazon, Dell, and the Washington Post have made headlines with strict office return mandates, leaving millions wondering, is workplace flexibility about to vanish? The phenomenon is happening in all industries starting in 2025, and here is a list of the major ones. I think to be on the safe side, you might not want to spend the money on that 5-year digital nomad visa that Italy, Greece, and Spain are promoting with gusto right now, before you find out if you're one of the lucky candidates that are mandated to be in the office 3 to 5 days a week now. Here are 6 major companies that are demanding that their workers come back in the office starting in January 2025. Amazon, Disney, JP Morgan, Starbucks, X, formerly Twitter, and Zoom. Wow, now we know that is millions of workers that will be made to go back to the office. Curious, how many are living in paradise right now? Here is something that Elon Musk said back in 2022, and as we were once small business owners ourselves back in the day, we tend to agree with Elon on this one. Ex-owner Elon Musk has consistently opposed remote work, saying he believes workers are more productive when working from a corporate office. In 2022, he said all ex-workers would be expected to report to the office on a full-time basis, and that he would interpret a failure to show up as a resignation from the company. Imagine you are living in Bali and you are a remote worker for the tech company X, which was formerly Twitter, and you've been given a roster of work that needs to be completed by a deadline. Would you get it done sooner by being in the office environment or by being on the beautiful Bali beaches environment? No matter what people think, being on a beautiful beach can be distracting, no? President-elect Donald Trump has asked that all federal workers need to come back into the office by the time he is in office or they'll be fired. Now, I'm telling you this because this is what's happening with remote workers in all industries. Please, we don't want any political discourse on this video. It only distracts from the point and subject of the video. Musk then claimed on social media earlier this month that almost no one who is employed by the government works in person, leading to thousands of empty buildings, not just in America, but around the world, paid for with your tax dollars. Doing more research, we find that the number of digital nomads all over the world now has more than 10x'd from just a few years ago. Apparently, according to abrotherbabroad.com, there were over 35 million digital nomads around the world in 2022. Some of these digital nomads may decide to quit their live abroad lifestyle when the mandate starts in January 2025, but some will quit their jobs because they like the lifestyle it brings living abroad. However, most digital nomads are self-employed and they won't need to go back into the office because their body is their office. Professions of digital nomads. 83% of digital nomads are self-employed. 17% are employed by companies in remote working capacities. So move over, retirees. The new kid is in town and they're taking over the live abroad. It appears the digital nomad trend is here to stay, and more remote workers still seek out positions where they can work from their computer and move abroad or use the skills they already have and start their own online business. This, in turn, could cause even more of a bottleneck in the live and retire abroad world, where more and more places will become overpromoted, overpriced, and overrated, just as Mexico, Colombia, Portugal, and Spain have become. Mexico is the #1 hotspot for digital nomads, by the way. However, digital nomads don't follow the top 10 global index list of best places to live. It seems they are still going to all of those most popular expat countries that we call overrated. Mexico was rated at the top location for digital nomads by 13% of nomads surveyed, followed by Thailand, Indonesia, Colombia, and Vietnam. Portugal was rated the top digital nomad location in Western Europe. Does any of that sound familiar to you? At this juncture, the geographical line between the digital nomads and the retire abroad crowd is getting more and more blurred as there are more and more people jumping on the vlogging bandwagon. But do we really want to live somewhere where we are looked at as the cause of local displacement or as the ugly foreigner? We don't want to make this video about how the wealthier folks raise prices for the not so wealthy, but we do have to mention it because it's a big part of the expat experience. Even in some areas of South America with just a few expats in a certain neighborhood, the locals do not want the foreigners to make changes to their gravel road to improve it, because improving the road would cause even more foreigners to want to live there. Just the tiniest of things can cause a new demographic in small towns in South America. Imagine a barrage of digital nomads descending on a town or city. It doesn't take long for the whole landscape to change negatively, from renting an apartment to eating out in restaurants. It reminds us of the $250 3-bedroom apartment we were looking at, which had no views, and the landlord quickly let us know that all the other gringos had taken over the entire apartment complex across the street, and the rents there were $600. The views were across the street. Here's what one of our viewers shared with us just today about a small coastal town in Ecuador. Not only is this not normal behavior from the locals, it shows clear resentment in the way they reacted to something that normally would improve their lives. But I must add, this small coastal town has seen a barrage of foreigners, mostly from America, going there, and it seems as if the locals have just had enough. Here goes. For example, one story goes that an expat couple bought some land, but the road to it was very poor, so they personally spent money on a public road to better it so they could get in and out when it rains. But the locals did not like that at all and destroyed the road work. The sentiment being progress is on their terms and pace. It's wild because that road was not just for that couple, but other locals in the area. After they destroyed it, it was worse than before they fixed it. Unbeknown to this expat that wrote in, we happen to be in the know that taxing authorities charge everyone on the street for the improvement. We learned this from local Ecuadorians. The proper thing for these expats to have done is to have discussed it with everyone on the street before making any improvements. They went about it totally disregarding the neighbors, which were sure had less money than the foreigner and probably could not afford the increase in fees and taxes. To us, this type of behavior towards the foreigner shows they are very tired of what's happening to their once laid-back, peaceful little coastal town. And can you blame them? So for us, it looks like we got out of this live-abroad rat race just in time, because who wants to be around locals who feel resentment towards the foreigner like that? It's not a good situation to be in. So the bottom line is this: if you move abroad, do a little bit of research for yourself and move somewhere that doesn't have a lot of traffic, and then don't tell anyone. Do you know how to keep a secret? Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you have enjoyed this information. Stay safe and be blessed. Take care and bye-bye.